I never thought the worst day of my life would start with sunshine. But there I was, sitting in a leather chair inside the glass-walled conference room of Klein and Rowe attorneys, sunlight pouring in like the universe was mocking me. The will reading for my parents had begun. Across the table, my brother Nathan looked like he was already celebrating. Perfectly tailored suit, slicked back hair, and that smug little smirk he always wore when he thought he'd won, which, to be honest, was most of the time. I sat quietly, clutching the arms of my chair, heart pounding. I wasn't expecting much. I never did, not when it came to our family. But I still held on to the smallest sliver of hope. Maybe, just maybe, they had left me something more than silence and disappointment. "Miss Emily Carter," the lawyer began, glancing at me over the top of her reading glasses. "Are you ready to proceed?" I nodded. I was 33 years old, and I was about to find out exactly what my parents thought of me. Not that it was ever much of a mystery. Nathan had been the golden boy, Carter Tech's shining heir, while I was the quiet one, the odd one, the daughter who traded spreadsheets for sketchbooks and corporate strategy for restoration work. The lawyer cleared her throat and began reading aloud. "To our beloved son Nathan, for his unwavering dedication to the family legacy and his stewardship of Carter Tech." She kept going and going. A list of assets spilled out like a waterfall. Beach house in Malibu, shares in the company, vintage cars, trust funds. I lost count somewhere after the private jet. Nathan leaned back, beaming. He didn't even try to look surprised. Then came my turn. "To our daughter Emily," the lawyer said, then paused. Her eyes dropped to the page as if she didn't want to make eye contact. "We leave the painting, titled Evening's Grace, currently displayed in Margaret's study." That was it. Just a painting. I blinked. My throat went dry. "I'm sorry, what?" Nathan chuckled under his breath. The lawyer added almost apologetically, "It was your mother's favorite. She insisted it go to you." I sat there frozen, not because I cared about the money or the real estate, but because in that moment I felt like I'd been erased, as if even in death my parents wanted me to know I had never really belonged. I didn't say a word when I left the law office. What was there to say? Nathan was all grins and handshakes with the attorneys, already talking about restructuring Carter Tech and expanding our family legacy. I just walked past him, head down, clutching my mother's painting like it was the last piece of her I had left. When I pulled up to the old Carter estate, the house I grew up in but never truly felt at home, something in me shifted. The gate guards looked at me like I didn't belong anymore, but they let me in after I explained about the painting. Inside, Mrs. Doyle, our longtime housekeeper, met me at the front door. Her eyes welled with tears as she pulled me into a hug. "Oh, Emily," she whispered, "it's not right. It's just not right." I hugged her back tightly, blinking fast to keep my own tears in check. She had always been kind to me, more like family than my actual family most days. We walked together to the upstairs study, where the painting still hung exactly where I remembered it. She helped me take it down gently and wrapped it in one of Mom's old quilts. "She used to stare at this for hours," Mrs. Doyle said, brushing her fingers over the canvas, especially toward the end. Sometimes she'd mutter things about shapes, numbers, patterns. We thought it was the medication. I looked at the painting again, really looked. It was titled Evening's Grace. A forest scene at twilight, the trees tall and dark against a fading purple sky. But there was something odd. Hidden among the branches and shadows were geometric shapes, hexagons, triangles, lines that seemed to pulse with meaning I couldn't quite grasp. "Did she ever say anything else?" I asked. Mrs. Doyle hesitated. "Only that one day, you'd understand. She said you see things differently, always have." Her words echoed in my mind the whole drive back to my apartment. That night, I hung the painting on my living room wall. I poured myself a glass of wine and sat on the couch, staring at it in the quiet. It wasn't just a forest. It was a message. I just didn't know how to read it yet. I couldn't sleep that night. Every time I closed my eyes, all I could see were those shapes in the painting, silent, deliberate, almost like they were waiting for me to figure them out. At around 2 a.m., I got up, turned on every lamp in the apartment, and dragged the painting over to my dining table. I stared at it under warm light, then grabbed my loupe from my restoration kit and leaned in. That's when I saw it. The shapes weren't just random. Each one was painted in slightly different tones, Barely noticeable to the naked eye, but under close inspection, they formed a sequence. It reminded me of something I'd studied in college, visual cryptography, hiding information in plain sight. My mother knew I'd see it. She'd counted on it. I pulled out a notebook and started sketching what I saw, clusters of triangles, intersecting lines, hexagonal patterns that almost looked like coordinates. It was like the forest in the painting was overlaid with a secret language. Then came the strangest part. One of the shapes, almost invisible in dim light, lined up with a faint shimmer under the paint. I held my breath and ran a soft brush over the area. The finish lifted ever so slightly. Beneath it was something else. Something metallic. My heart started racing. I carefully lifted the edge with a spatula and pulled out a thin sheet embedded into the frame. It was almost like a hidden panel. There, etched in tiny script, was my mother's handwriting. If you're reading this, Em, you've already started seeing what others couldn't. Follow the patterns. Trust your instinct. They'll lead you to everything. I didn't even realize I was crying until a tear dropped onto the edge of the note. Her words weren't just a message. They were confirmation. She had left this for me. And she'd known they would never let me have anything else. I was still sitting at the table when the knock came. It was just past midnight. 3 slow knocks. I froze. No one came to my apartment this late. My heart thudded as I walked quietly to the door and peeked through the peephole. Nathan. His hair was slightly out of place, tie loosened, face flushed. Not from alcohol, but from panic. "Emily," he said through the door, "we need to talk about the painting." I didn't answer. He stepped closer. "Open up, please." I stayed still. He'd never cared about art. Never once noticed the painting hanging in Mom's study. Now, suddenly, in the middle of the night, he was desperate for it. "Emily, listen." His voice dropped, urgent now. "Mom left instructions about the painting. You weren't supposed to get it. It wasn't meant for you." I swallowed hard. My hands were cold. "Just give it to me and I'll wire you $5 million tonight." That's when I knew he wasn't here because of sentiment. He wasn't trying to fix anything. He was scared. And whatever was in that painting, whatever Mom had hidden, was powerful enough to shake everything he'd built. I backed away from the door. Then I heard it. He was fumbling with a spare key, probably one I'd forgotten he had from when I was sick last year. I snatched the painting from the wall and ran to my bedroom, locking the door just as the front door creaked open. "Emily?" Nathan's voice boomed through the apartment. "Where are you? Where's the painting?" I crouched beside my bed, clutching the canvas, my pulse racing. The soft glow from my bedside lamp lit up the painting just enough to reveal what I'd missed before. The shapes weren't just forming patterns. They were forming numbers. Corded. And beneath the canvas, taped to the frame, was a second folded note. This time, it wasn't just a message. It was a map. The coordinates led me to a remote stretch of land in upstate New York, 3 hours from the city, tucked between wooded hills and forgotten backroads. It was barely dawn when I got there. Mist clung low over the grass and the property looked abandoned. An old farmhouse leaned to one side like it was tired of standing, but I wasn't here for the house. I was here for what was underneath it. The map from Mom's note had marked a small clearing behind the barn. I walked across damp ground, heart pounding, holding the painting like it was still guiding me. Then I saw it. A rusted storm cellar door, almost swallowed by weeds and vines. I cleared the overgrowth and found a keypad hidden beneath a loose panel of wood. My hands trembled as I entered the first sequence of numbers from the painting. The light blinked green. The door creaked open. A cold draft hit me as I stepped into the darkness, down metal stairs slick with moisture. As I descended, motion sensor lights flickered on one by one, revealing a long, sterile hallway. White walls, reinforced doors, ventilation humming softly. At the end was another keypad. I took a shaky breath and entered the second sequence. This time, a hiss of compressed air and a soft click. The door slid open, and I froze. The room was massive, clean, clinical, humming with quiet electricity. Tables covered in blueprints and prototypes, shelves lined with labeled boxes, a wall of monitors still blinking with active data. But what made my knees almost buckle was the back wall. patent certificates. Dozens of them. All signed by Eleanor Carter, my mother. And next to them framed newspaper clippings, press releases from Carter Tech with Nathan or my father posing beside their inventions. I moved closer, eyes burning. They hadn't just stolen her work. They'd built the entire company on it. I didn't know how long I stood there, staring at that wall. My mother's name, her ideas, her brilliance, all hidden behind the faces of men who'd erased her own husband and son. I wanted to scream, but instead, I walked deeper into the lab, pulled out my phone, and started taking photos. Every document, every patent, every blueprint. I wasn't sure what I would do with it yet, but I knew one thing. They weren't going to bury her work again. I had just opened a drawer labeled Confidential 2005 when I heard footsteps above me. Then voices. Muffled, urgent. I froze. The steel door behind me hissed open. I turned. Nathan. And behind him, my father. I staggered back. He was supposed to be dead. A heart attack 2 years ago, a closed casket. I'd cried at his funeral. But there he was, very much alive, stepping into the lab like he'd never left. Emily, he said, like we were meeting for coffee, you weren't supposed to find this place. I could barely breathe. You're alive. Nathan shut the door behind him and locked it. We needed you to open the lab, he said, calm but cold. Mom changed all the security codes. We couldn't get in without you. My father looked around slowly. She was always clever. Hiding it all in a painting? That was bold. I clenched my fists. You stole from her. You both did. You built Carter Tech on her work. We built Carter Tech for all of us, he replied. She didn't understand business. She wanted to patent things and sit on them. We brought them to life. You erased her, I said, voice shaking. And now you want me to help you do it again? Nathan stepped forward. We need your silence, Em. That's all. Give us the files, and you can walk away. $10 million, no questions asked. I stared at them. This wasn't just greed, it was fear. They knew what would happen if the truth got out. And I knew what I had to do. I turned, walked to the far wall, and activated the backup terminal, the one Mom had labeled failsafe. My fingers flew across the keyboard as my father shouted my name. I didn't stop. The screen blinked. Failsafe activated. Evidence uploading to secured offsite servers. Too late now. Alarms started blaring the moment the upload began. Red lights pulsed across the ceiling and the temperature in the lab dropped. My father lunged toward the terminal, but I blocked him. It's done, I said. You can't stop it now. Nathan slammed his fist against the wall. You have no idea what you've just done. Oh, I do, I said, staring him down. For the first time, I've done something you can't control. We were still standing there, locked in a tense standoff, when the sound of sirens pierced the early morning silence outside. My heart jumped. They were coming. Within minutes, the lab was swarming with police and federal agents, guns drawn, voices shouting, badges flashing. A female agent in a Navy windbreaker approached me calmly. Emily Carter, she asked. We've been expecting this upload. You're safe now. I nearly collapsed with relief. My father and Nathan didn't say a word as they were handcuffed and led out of the lab. Nathan glanced back at me once, his expression somewhere between rage and regret, but my father never looked back. That said everything. Over the next 48 hours, the world unraveled. News stations ran non-stop coverage. Carter Tech scandal, CEO found alive, accused of fraud. Whistleblower daughter uncovers decades of stolen patents. Photos of the lab, my mother's patent wall, the painting. Everyone wanted my story. My phone never stopped ringing. But the only call I cared about came from Mrs. Doyle. They're taking everything out of the house, she whispered. All your mother's things. Files, journals, her old laptop. I managed to save this. Later that day, I sat on her living room floor, holding a final envelope with my name in Mom's handwriting. Inside was a flash drive. And a letter. My Emily. If you're reading this, it means you found what I couldn't tell you in life. You always saw what others missed. That was your gift. And now, it's your responsibility. I read the letter 3 times. By the end, I knew exactly what I had to do. A week later, I walked into Carter Tech's headquarters, not as a visitor, not as the forgotten daughter, but as its new legal owner. The board had no choice. With all the evidence, with my mother's original patents, and the public collapse of their leadership, I was the only one who could save the company. But I wasn't here to save it. I was here to rebuild it. The first thing I did was rename it Eleanor Innovations. A name that meant something. I stood in front of the press, hands steady, heart pounding, and told the truth. This company was built on theft, I said. But starting today, it will be rebuilt on truth. We launched a foundation in my mother's name to compensate every inventor who had been robbed. We created programs for young women in STEM, funding their education and protecting their ideas. The lab she'd hidden became an incubator for independent creators, an open space for innovation, not exploitation. And the painting? Evening's Grace now hangs behind my desk in the new executive office. Its shapes are no longer a mystery. They're a reminder. A few weeks later, I received a letter from Nathan. From prison. He wanted to talk, rebuild the family, find common ground. I didn't respond. Some things don't need fixing, some endings are necessary. Instead, I spent my time walking the halls of a company finally living up to the name on the door. I mentored young engineers. I reviewed grant applications from single mothers with brilliant designs and no support. I watched ideas flourish, not stolen, not silenced, but nurtured and celebrated. One afternoon, a girl of about 10 stopped me during a tour. "Did your mom really invent all this?" she asked, eyes wide with wonder. "She did," I said, smiling, "and now, so can you."